Hi everyone, welcome back to Crochet Rocks. It's Tracy, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this Lacey baby blanket. So I recently made a scarf with this stitch and it's slightly different for the blanket, only slightly. But I wanted to make a blanket that was a little bit lacy because I have never done one. I've always done really tight stitches, apart from the willow square, which had a few holes. But this is a stitch that my mum taught me many years ago, but I've adapted it and made it a little bit more modern with these posts because I like the way it kind of makes a chevron out of this lap with the spaces. And I really liked it for the scarf. And my sister asked me to make a baby blanket, so I thought, well, I'll make one out of this stitch and see what it looks like. So because it's a lacier pattern, I always like to do a plainer type border. And I've finished this blanket all but sewing in the very one end. That's the only end that I'm left with. So this is a blanket. Let me show you the yarn that I've used. I used this pastel baby yarn, and this is just an inexpensive yarn that I bought in a shop called B&M in the UK, and it's called Little Dreams. It's upside down, always is if I've got it, you know, it wouldn't be me if I didn't have it upside down. Little Dreams, and it's two-tone baby knitting yarn, which is that kind of marble effect where there's each strand has two tones to it. But this has some really lovely pastel shades. I've used it before in a blanket called Baby Bubbles, which I think I made a long time ago. There is a tutorial for it. But this is machine washable and it's a DK weight. Now, for those of you who've seen my scarf tutorial, I made that with yarn that was a little bit thinner, and I used a 4.5mm crochet hook. Some DK weight yarn comes up a lot thinner than others for some strange reason, but for this one I wanted it a bit more bold and the actual shells to look a little bit more pronounced. So I've used a 5mm hook, which I don't normally use for DK unless it's really thick. You'll also need a darning needle. There are not many ends, thankfully, and as well as a darning needle, pair of scissors, the usual stuff. So I've, for that white trim, just used this Women's Institute DK. I thought it looked like a really good even size match, and it's just white, so that's what I've used to edge. It's lovely and soft. So that's the only kind of contrast that I use. The white in the blanket itself was actually in this skein. So all of these colours were in there, and as I thought white was there, it would make a nice kind of addition to the border. I also do a seamless border. I'll show you how to do that when I get round to it. So I'm not going to make the whole blanket again for the tutorial. I'll make a swatch, but I will show you exactly how to convert that into a blanket this size or bigger or smaller, or a wrap, because it would also make a really nice lightweight wrap to put around your shoulders, and that is ever so easy. I will tell you everything you need to know in a moment. I'm just going to pause it now, clear all this away, and so we can get started. But if you haven't already, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, and you'll be informed when there are new videos. So just bear with me while I get ready. Okay, so let's get started. Now, for this blanket, I made 114 stitches plus 2 for the chain. So that was obviously 116. So it works up as a multiple of 6 plus 2. So as long as you've done a multiple of 6, it doesn't matter what size blanket you make, or wrap, as I said before, as long as you have a multiple of 6 plus the 2. So for this purpose, I'm just going to do a small swatch of 36 plus the 2. So you need to make a slip knot, and you can do that however you have been taught to do your slip knot. When I was young, I was taught to make a loop, go behind it, and just bring the yarn through and pull it, and that makes your slip knot. So I'm going to make sure the beginners can follow this. So I'm going to do 36 chain plus 2 extra, and to do that you yarn over and pull through. Now we don't want our chain to be tight, so make sure you pull up a little way, yarn over and pull through, pull up just a little way, yarn over and pull through. So that's how we're going to do the chain. As I say, we don't want it tight, we don't want it to kind of pucker at the end. So I'm going to pause the video while I do my 38. So that's 36 plus 2. The reason I'm going to pause it is because it's very annoying when someone else is counting and you're trying to count. So in case you're following along and you're counting, I'm just going to catch up with you once I've done my 38 chain. Okay, here we are. I've got my 38 chains, so that's 36 for the pattern and 2 extra. Now we're going to count back. This one on the hook doesn't count this loop. We're going to count back to 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this one here is the one we're going to work in, the 5th one from the hook. We're going to yarn over, go into that stitch, yarn over, and pull up the loop. So we have 3, just pull that down and you'll see 3 on our hook. We're going to yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. In the UK that's called a treble crochet. In the US it's a double, and that is mostly what our blanket will be made of. We're going to chain 1 and do another one in exactly the same space. So yarn over, back in, yarn over and pull up, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. So now we're going to skip 2. So you count, I'm going to hold this with my fingers so you can see. We're going to skip 1, 2, and we're going to work into this one. And we're just going to do 1 in there. That creates a post between our stitches. So the 2 turning chain are our first post. Then we have our V, which is 2 in the same with a chain in the middle. And now we have a post. So we're just going to repeat that all the way along. We're going to skip 2. So we're skipping 1. If I can see what I'm doing, that is. If you ever get confused, just pull it up and you'll see the one you're in. 1, 2, go into the next one and make a V stitch. So we're going to skip 1, 2, in the next one. We're going to do a UK treble, US double, 1 chain, and then another one in the same place. If I get ahead of you, just pause it. So this is how it's going to look all the way along. We've got our post at the end, our V, our post and our V, and we're going to do that all the way along. So I'm going to pause the video, and what you need to do is to skip 2, make a post, skip 2, make a V, skip 2, make a post, and so on, and you should end up with a single post at the end. So I'll catch up with you when we get to the end. Okay, so I've gone all the way along, and it does look like the gaps are quite big, but they do close up. So just bear with it. So now I've done my last V, and I've got 3 remaining. So in the last one, I just need to do our last post. And we're going to turn our work and chain our 2. And then in this first V, I'm going to do a total of 5 UK treble crochets or US doubles. Just the same as we were all the way along here, doing exactly the same stitch. So it's 5 in that one first V stitch. Okay, this is my last one. So that is now our shell, 5 stitches in that one V. Now in our post, we're going to just do another post. So 1 single UK treble or US double on its own. So if you see a V, you're putting in a shell. If you see a post, you're putting in a post. So now we're back to the next V. We're going to do 5 in that one stitch. It's a very easy blanket. The stitch is not complicated at all. It only has a 2-row repeat, and they're very simple stitches. So you just need to pull out some yarn. And now we're back to our post. So we're going to do a post in that same stitch. And next it's the V. So we're going to do 5, make our shell in that V. And it's not a very wide swatch, so I'll stay with you until I get to the end. Of course, you'll be making your blanket or your wrap so the rows will be longer for you. But by all means, just pause it and catch up. So now I've done my post. In my post, I'm doing my shell in my V. It's my 5th one. And I'm going to do one in the post. Now I do need to pull out some more yarn. Just bear with me a second. Okay, back to our V. And after a few rows, you start to see the pattern forming. And now our last one in there. I love this yarn. It's got some really pretty colours. It's now becoming a bit peachy. Do our post. Now we're in our last V, and then we've got our final post at the end. So we do our 5. And we're going to do 1 in our very last stitch. There, it's the top of our 2 chain. There's the bottom and there's the top. So now we turn our work and we're going to go back to doing our V's. So we do our 2 chain, which I post at the end, just to keep our edges nice and straight. And we're going to go into the center one. So we count 1, 2, 3. And this is our center stitch, and we're going to make our V in our shell. And then we're just going to go into the post and make a post into the center, which is nice and easy to see, but if you find it hard, you can always count them, 1, 2, 3, but they usually stick out as the center one. And we're going to do a V. So where we have a shell, we make a V. Where we have a post, we make a post. And now we're going to do another V stitch. It's nice and simple, but nice and effective at the same time. We'll just do another all the way to the end, and I will turn and show you how it's looking. Remember, if I go too fast for you, just to pause it while you catch up. You can pause it at the end of my row and catch up if you want to. If you're not already flying along with it. It's one of these really easy patterns where you can watch TV and do it, and you just take your eyes off the TV for a moment and you're in the right place. So now we've got to the end, we're going to go into our top chain and do our post, and we're going to turn our work. So this is now the right way, and you can see these stitches here are the right way round, and these are the backs. So this is the way round that I like to have it. I know it's fairly pale yarn on a fairly pale background, but I think you can see it's really effective. So we do our 2 chain, without making the hook fall out, we do 2 chain, and we're going to do our shell into our V's, just as we did on the row before. As I said, it's just a 2 row repeat. Hang on, more yarn. I must be not pulling out enough. Oh. Okay, so where was we? I've done 3. And now I'm making a post. And we're going to do that all the way to the end of the row, just as we did before. Nice and simple. It's looking nice. So I'm going to pause it then, and I'll catch up with you when we get to the end, and I'll tell you how the rest of the details for the blanket. But I'll just get to the end of this row and I'll come back to you. Okay, so I've got all the way to the end, and that is how we do this blanket. That is the 2-row repeat. So we're doing the row which is setting up for our shells, and then our shell row. So this particular blanket that I made was 57 rows ending on a wrong side row. So obviously that is ending on the row with the V's, and that's because we started with that row. So we want to end that with the same kind of stitch, so that when we put our border, it makes sense, because otherwise I feel like it would fan out. If you finished on this row, it does have a tendency to fan out, but this row pulls it back into the right shape. So we finish on the same row that we began. So for me, that was 57 rows for this particular blanket. So what I'm going to do, in the description box, I'm going to put all of the materials I've used, and all of the details on how to do it, and all the measurements in the description box, so if you want to see them. So carry on with your blanket or your wrap. Obviously, if you're doing a wrap, you may not want to do the same border, but it's completely up to you. But I'm going to carry on now, and with my swatch, until I've got it the right length, and I'll come back to you and show you how I did the border. Okay, so here's my very last row. I'm just going to finish my last stitch and then end off with this colour. Now, of course, you can change colour if you want, but I find it cleaner to start a new colour, get a cleaner edge. So I'm just going to end off with that and move this one out of the way. Just need to wind some up, and then we can move this yarn out of the way. Of course, you can use any yarn that you want. If you wanted to use a 4-weight yarn, you could, as long as you make sure you use the corresponding crochet hook, then that's fine. I just need to find the end. Where's the end gone? How strange. Oh, there it is. Just blended in. Okay, so I'm going to pull out my white. I had a bit of an accident with this yarn yesterday. Well, it wasn't me, it was my partner Gary. He dropped the ball of yarn. I'd finished with it on my blanket, and he dropped it in toast. So that was good, wasn't it? So now we have to be careful of one thing, that when we're putting in our stitches for our rows on these 2 edges, this one here, that we do the same amount of stitches. So as you can see, we have a post, we skip 2, then this is just 1 stitch. So then we skip 2, 1 stitch, skip 2, 1 stitch. We make sure that we go into each and every one of them, but when we get to the V, we're just going in the 1 stitch. And then when we come to this side, we need to do exactly the same. Just go into those stitches, 1 in the V. So we've got an identical number of stitches on that row. So I'm going to start it actually at this edge, because otherwise I'll have 2 ends to sew in. Maybe I'll start on this edge, so that you can see me go on to this row. So I'm just going to join it in the very corner. So there's our 2 chains. I'm going into the top one, and I'm going to pull in my white yarn. Now I always, I try and always make it so that it's less visible. So sometimes if I'm doing a taller stitch, I will, my very first chain, go through both my tail and my top yarn. But I don't really want to do that with this, because it's a smaller stitch I'm going to be using. So I'm just going to make tie it in like that. So now I'm going to put my hook in and bring it through my loop, and I'm going to do 1 chain and cinch it down. So I'm going to be doing a UK double crochet, which in the US is a single. So in this corner, where we normally have 3 to turn the corner, I'm going to do 2. So just insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2. and I'm going to do that again in the same space. We normally have 3 in the corner, but I'm going to just do 2 because I'm making half a corner. So I've got my 2 loops and I'm pulling through. So now we want to make sure that we keep our stitches the right stitch count, which is obviously a bit difficult because we've skipped 2 down here. So I find the best way to do that is to just go in every stitch you see. So we're going in the post. It's hard to get in that first post. And then we're going in between because there was a chain there. And we're going in our post. And that makes up for the fact that we skipped 2. We've got 1 there and we've skipped 2. So I'm going to go into this one. And I'm going to go into this one. And then into the post, which is hard, but never mind, we get through it. Into the middle, and I'm working over this tail. And then we're going to go into this one. All the way along. Into every stitch you see, and into the middle of our V. And that will keep our count the same. So I'm just going to do that all the way along, and I'll show you what I do when I get to the corner. Okay, so we're here at the corner and we do have a tail. So if I just hold that down, then you won't get confused with that. So I'm going to go into this corner stitch and do 3 of those UK double crochets or US singles. So I've done 1. I'm going to do another and then a third one in the same space, which turns the corner for us, and that just keeps it neat along there. Now we're coming along this edge, and what we need to do is just pick up, make sure that we don't go too far along so it pulls, but we need to pick up stitches so nice and evenly. So I just go in between this stitch and pull up and make my stitch. Then the next one would be here. Just kind of judge it. You're just picking up stitches along the edge, and you can usually see roughly where they need to be. That tail's getting in the way a little bit, isn't it? There we go. I hold it behind. So there you can see we should put one here. So just make sure you're not going, as I say, too far ahead or too close so that there would be too many stitches. Just judge it. And we do that all the way along until we get to the next corner. And I'm still working over that tail. Trying not to get it in the way so that it annoys you all. But there you go, we've gone around the corner. I'm going to carry on picking up stitches until I get to this corner. So I'm going to pause it now and catch up with you when I get there. Okay, so I'm back at the corner again, just putting out more yarn. And all I'm going to do again is go into this one here and do 3 for the corner. And we're back to go along that edge. And we're just, as long as we keep our work nice and flat and even, so that we don't have too many stitches along there and we're not pulling it tight, then that's fine. So in this one we're doing the opposite way round, where we've got our 2, and then in our V we just have 1, and then we have our 2 chain, which are upside down to us this way around. And then we've got 1 in between there, and then we're in here. So we just carry on picking them up so that they're not too puckered and there's not too many stitches, and we're keeping it nice and flat and even and in line with this side. And we're going to go all the way along to this corner. We're going to do 3 in that corner, and then we're going to pick up our stitches the same way we did along here, all the way to here. And once we get almost to the end of this row, I will come back to you. So I'm going to pause it now and I'll come back to you and show you how we make this seamless corner. And so I'm just going to pause the video. I'll catch up with you when we get back to the start. Okay, so we're all the way back to the start, gone all the way along, and we're going to go into this stitch here where we've got our 2 stitches for which is half of the corner. I'm going to do the other half, complete that. So this is my 3rd, and then I'm going to slip stitch into the middle one, like the first one I did. I'm going to do slip stitch into there, and that takes me right to the middle of the corner. So that's how we do a seamless corner. We do 1 chain, cinch it down, and we're going to do 2 into this stitch again. So we're going to go straight into the stitch we've just slip stitched into, easy for me to say, and we're going to do 2 in that stitch. I think I've split my yarn. Let's do that again. Don't like it when that happens. Here we are, there's 1 and there's 2. Okay, so this was our half a corner, and when we come back round again, we'll finish that half off. So now we're just going to go in each and every stitch that we've picked up all the way around, 3 in our corner, in our center one all the way along each edge, 3 in this corner, 3 in this corner, come back around and finish off that corner. And we're going to do this on my blanket border because it's a much bigger blanket. Obviously I did 5 white rows of the UK double crochet, which is a single in the US. So I did my border as 5 rows, or rounds, as we are doing rounds now, to be honest with you, not rows. So I'm just going to go in 1 in every single stitch around. I'll carry on doing my border, and I'll come back and show you how to do the last row. If you get confused when you get back to here, then just watch this corner again, but it's very straightforward. When we get back round, we'll do our last stitch, we'll finish our 3rd in that corner and slip stitch into the center of it, and that's where we'll go up from. So we'll continue our border in the corner, but making half a corner and then finishing it off when we get back. I hope that makes sense. If not, just watch this row again. Okay, so I'm back again at the corner. I've done my last stitch. I'm going to go into that very first one, complete my corner with my 3rd, and into that next stitch I'm going to do the slip stitch, which brings me right into the middle of the corner. Now I would carry on for another 3 rows with my border to get this nice wide border on my blanket. I think as well, as I said before, a lacy blanket looks nice with a tight kind of stitch, but I'm going to call that it for this particular border because it's only a swatch, and there just would be 3 rows repeated exactly the same way. So now I've got my border around, if you can imagine it's a bit wider, and I'm going to show you my very last stitch. So I'm just going to clear this yarn away and come straight back. Okay, so I'm going to show you my last stitch of this blanket. This whole next row is done with a UK half treble, which is a half double in the US. So what you want to do is you want to go into the very corner stitch. I'm going to join the yarn here because there's no tail, and I'm going to pull my yarn through, and it's a bigger stitch, so I'm going to use both ends to make my first chain, which I'm going to cinch down, and then I'm going to drop that tail, and I'm going to do my first and second stitch in this one stitch here. So that is to yarn over, go into the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through all 3. I know there were 4, but that's because I had my tail. I'll show you again. Yarn over, into the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. You've got 3 on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 3. And that is a half treble. So it's slightly bigger stitch than we're doing now, but not as tall as a UK treble or US double. So now we're just going to go in each stitch around using the same yarn that we made our blanket with and go all the way around. So I think this I always think this looks really nice when you've got a variegated yarn that changes colour. Most of the ones I've used before now have changed colour quicker, but even though this one is a slower change, I still really like the way it looks against the white. So that's kind of how it looks. And if you look on the wider border of the actual blanket, this is how it looks. I think it really looks quite effective. I did toy with the idea of doing another row of these just around the edge, which you can do if you want, just to pick up the white and do another row of UK double crochet or US single. I've done that before. It looks quite nice because you just get this little stripe of colour in your border, but I didn't do that this time. I just thought it looked quite nice with this one row of the colour, because I do like these colours. I think the way that they change as well, from kind of pinks and peaches to mauvey blues, and I just like the way it looks. So I decided to leave it, because if you do that last row, it does make this border a little bit thinner, so you don't see quite as much of the colour. It takes that row away, that top part. So you just carry on all the way around. Put out a bit more yarn, going in each and every stitch of your border. And then when you get to the corner, just as you did with the row below, you do 3 of these in the center corner and carry on all the way around. We'll show you the first corner and then I'll pause it until the end. Because it's a small swatch, the colour might not change quite so quickly, and there might not be so many different colours in this border. But it depends on what yarn you've used. One time I made a really colourful rainbow blanket, and I edged it in a rainbow colour change yarn. That looked really cool. You know, the ones like you can get from Poundland, and I think Peyton's do one, Peyton's Fab DK. So here we are, we're at the corner. Now sometimes it's difficult to see which is the centre one. I think it's the next one. So we're going to do 3 in there. And we're just going to go all the way around. 1 in each, 3 in the corner. I'll work over that tail, which is why at the end I had just 1 tail to work over, which was amazing. I haven't done it yet. I need to sew that tail in. I'll do that at the end. So that's cool, isn't it? Just all the way around, 1 tail. Can't be bad. So I'm going to pause it then, as I said, and I'll catch up with you when I get back to the start. Okay, so I'm almost back. Got 1 stitch there to do. And then to finish off my 3rd one of my corner, slip stitch into the center of it, which is there, because that's my chain, and finish off. Cut a nice long tail for sewing in, and perfectly just the 1 tail to sew. So there we have it. That's how to do the border. Like I said, if you wanted to, if it was a thin border like this, then that white one might look nice, but I feel like because it's a wide border, that white one would take away. It'd just be like a thin stripe of colour. But that's how I did it anyway. So I hope you like that. This is the right side, obviously. So thank you for watching. Stay safe, take care. There is a left-handed and a right-handed version. Should you find yourself in the wrong one, then there will be a link at the front of the video. It comes up like a little line, and it tells you which one you can just click that to go to the other one. Likewise, there'll be some at the end of the video, like a little link to the next one. So thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed that, and you can easily adapt this pattern to any size blanket or wrap, whatever you want. So cool, thank you very much, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye for now.